Welcome back to another episode of Choose Courage Inc., where we help creatives, entrepreneurs, and aspiring corporate escape artists break free from the systems that were never built for them and instead create businesses where people, creativity, and courage come first. I'm Vivianne Castillo, founder of Choose Courage Inc., and today's episode is one of those let's actually talk about the money and the contracts conversations, because I feel like nobody tells you what it's really like to negotiate with a big company until you're already sitting in it, sweating. And so today I'm going to be talking with Ray Knickmeyer, who spent 20 years in corporate, Verizon, Capital One, big complicated places before going independent. They now help leadership teams move faster, make better decisions, and operate with less friction, bringing a human-centered design lens into strategy and operations. And not long after they went out on their own, they landed a deal with a Fortune 500 company they'd worked with in the past. The catch? It took 3 full months to actually get that contract signed. We get into what those 3 months actually felt like from the inside, the waiting, the dead zones between emails, the quiet catastrophizing that creeps in when nobody's responded in 2 weeks. Ray walks us through the real mechanics of B2B procurement, the templates, the legal language, the onboarding systems nobody warns you about. We also get a little bit into IP protection, deposits, payment terms that'll make your jaw drop, and the actual difference between holding a boundary and just being difficult. So if you've ever been curious about the behind the scenes of this, if you've ever stared down a scope of work from a company way bigger than you and felt your whole nervous system light up, or if you're just getting ready to send your very first proposal to someone intimidating, then this one's for you. Let's get into it. Ray, I'm really excited to be chatting with you today. Let's start at the table. Can you maybe take us to the moment in the negotiation process? What was that experience like? What was surfacing for you? What helped you get through that process? What's the tea?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so excited to get to talk with you as well. It's kind of funny because when I was thinking about this, when we first asked me whether we would have this conversation, it's like, I don't know that I thought about it that deeply at the time, but now I'm like in it and really it's like, reading back on my emotions. But I think for me, it wasn't actually the contracts because it took so long to get to the point where we were actually signing anything and getting into the sort of like nuances of fee schedules and things like that. The most anxious I was during the process was the dead zones between communications. I would send a statement of work out that I had drafted up to somebody. And then I would be like, well, I guess I'll just wait patiently for a week, 2 weeks. It's like, is it too soon to send a poke and see what's going on their side? It's a lot of that back and forth because some roles were shifting around there and some new people were on board. And so, but I was catastrophizing it, right? Because if I don't hear something for 2 weeks, I'm thinking, oh, well, I don't want to do it anymore, or the budget's suddenly gone, or this or that. But really, it's just like someone was on vacation and lost in the email. So all that kind of like swirl is where my brain was. And to navigate that, it was early in building the business. So it was kind of easy to, well, not easy, but it was like I would compartmentalize it and put it in a box over here and be like, all right, I'm going to work on my core strategy. I'm going to work on my marketing plan. I'm going to see about building other client bases in case this one falls through. So you could just kind of pivot over there. And video games and bird watching. Those were some of the other things.
Yeah. I mean, what I appreciate about that is it's a reminder that there is so much happening between the start of the conversation and the signing of a contract. I remember having a client once where we started the conversations in December and the contract was signed in May, early June. And in the midst of that, right, if you've worked in corporate long enough, you know that inside corporate, it can be a little chaotic. There's the reorgs, there's the changes in strategy, especially if you're doing this in the first half of the year. Just a lot of things can kind of be pushed up against or put on the back burner. And so I appreciate you, one, just laying out all these things, but also it's a reminder of like, how do we regulate our nervous system in the midst of the unknown, in the midst of the waiting? And I like hearing how you like bird watching, video games, reminding yourself of things.
Yep, exactly. I mean, part of the reason that I wanted to start my own business was to have more time for other activities. Oh, well, maybe I'll take a break from worrying about this and go work on my poetry, which I'm trying to get back into, and just have those moments. So it's like you did this on purpose so that you would have more time. So protect the time.
Yeah. And isn't it funny how quickly we go to, oh, it must be me. Maybe I'm the problem.
Always.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think it's about like, how do you give yourself grace in those moments? How do you ground yourself in those moments? I know we'll be getting into that in a little bit, but maybe we can back up for a second. How did this deal arrive in the first place? And what did it mean for a business of your size to have a company of that size on the other side of the table?
Yeah, well, I was very lucky, and sometimes when I've coached mentors of mentees of mine in the past, it's I always say a lot of your career is kind of down to luck in some ways, like who you got to work with, who you know. And I had some really great sponsors and mentors of my own during my corporate career, and that's where this particular deal came from. One of those relationships, a leader that I worked with in a previous role, really enjoyed working with them, and that connection just turned around into something really valuable here. They were in a new position. They liked working with me, and they reached out when they saw I was going independent and said, "Hey, let's have a conversation and see what we might be able to do together," which put me in a really good spot for being able to pitch back based on really in-depth knowledge about what I knew about her and what I knew about what she was trying to do and her company, and had a unique position to be in, which is I got to write the statement of work and
Mm,
pass it back, which doesn't always happen. Or for working with a big corporate client, I know I've certainly done my fair share on the other side of the table where it's you put out a call for proposals and then you get statements back from a number of places and you choose from them. So I did not have to do that. I was in a more privileged position to be able to actually write something out and in fact kind of name my terms.
mm.
So lucky there. Not that it helped it go any faster necessarily, but maybe that's something to keep in mind as you're working with clients like this is even in the best case scenarios.
Yeah.
It takes a while, but what it means for me to get to work with a client like that, it's just it's good for my ego to be to be honest, or just like for early on for me to be like verified that what I'm putting out there is valuable to a company of that size, like a Fortune 500, really means something. And eventually I'll want to play that out in terms of it's good to tell other potential clients that you're working with a client like that. It shows a track record of success and your ability to work inside those kinds of complex organizations.
Hmm.
And I just kind of like it. I like big companies. I've been in corporate for 20 years. I was at Verizon, which is gosh, how many are they? They're like 150,000 ways or something like that. And Capital One, which is 40 to 50,000. So big, complicated places. And they just have interesting problems
Yeah.
and are all of the things that make them intimidating to work with are also the things that are kind of most interesting about them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Are you open to me offering a reframe for you?
Sure.
Because I know you've said it a couple times about how you were lucky, but I actually think you created your own luck. And what I mean by that is you were able to turn this client into a
Mhm,
client because in your previous roles, when working with the main
mhm,
decision maker, you made yourself available. You were intentional in your work. You had a good reputation with this person. They saw the quality of your work within that other system, trusted it so much so that they're like, how do we bring you into this system? So, sure, luck in terms of budget and the stars aligning, but you actually created your own luck. You were intentional in that relationship. You kept a good relationship, which is why I often talk to folks. I think sometimes folks get really caught up on courting quote unquote companies, but it's
mhm,
actually about having good relationships with the people in these companies because when they go to other companies, they're going to be thinking about you, right? Or when you leave and they actually need a gap filled, they're going to be thinking about you. So it's a reminder to be a good person, to be like, be intentional, be thoughtful in your relationships in your 9 to 5 if you're thinking about making an exit, because those are often some of our very first and early clients.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's one of the big things I was thinking about in preparation for this call was, it is the network. The network is so important, and you have to nurture it. I've had such a nice time actually over the last 6 months or so reconnecting with people that from previous jobs who I hadn't talked to in years, and it's lovely and maybe even a little surprising just how excited people are to reconnect. So even if you haven't chatted with somebody who you worked with in a previous role that you liked working with or who you respected, and you haven't talked to them in a year or two, reach out because they probably do think about you too. And it's just a great opportunity to reignite a potential connection. Both for
Yeah.
good emotional purposes, like it's just good to be connected to people, but people go on to share opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. I
Oh,
mean, I remember reaching out to this was someone that was working within a larger client, and they had since transitioned to a new company and a new role. And I was just thinking about this person one day. So I shot them a text and I was like, hey, thinking about you. Hope all is well. I do have some bandwidth on my plate if you are ever curious about what it might look like to work with Humanity Center. And that single text ended up turning into a signed contract about 3 or 4 months later for about
mhm.
225K. And
Yeah.
that was just a text of, hey, thinking about you, curious if you are open to exploring something. We have bandwidth and would love to talk
Mhm.
about it.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
God, it takes so little time to reconnect too. So it's always worth it, whether it turns into something or it doesn't.
And so I want to bring us back into the B2B
Yeah.
procurement process.
Let's
And
do it.
because I think a lot of folks who are interested in consulting in this kind of work, they don't necessarily have an insider's take on what to expect. What is it like? What should I understand the experience to be? And so, wondering if you can maybe share with us, what did 3 months of B2B procurement actually feel like from the inside? Walk me through a little bit of that experience.
Yeah. Happy to do that. So the longest part of it was really figuring out what we were going to do together. So that all was a lot of the early back and forth, which is primarily between you, the person who wants to hire you because they think that you're cool, and then their immediate sort of like circle of support, right? So I might have talked to the leader that I had worked with before in February, but they just talked to this person on my team. And then
Hmm.
that person's like, well, go and talk to this person on the team. And so you're bouncing around a bunch of different folks who are not the person who signs the contract, but are the people who really figure out how to get you fit into the organization in a way that will make sense, and who know in some ways a little bit more about what's going on with the budget or what's going on with particular lines of work. So that was a long back and forth between a variety of different people to get to the point where I felt comfortable. I was like, okay, I think this is what you're asking for. So I
Hmm.
will write a statement of work and pitch it back and see if this is what you want. And that sat quiet for a little while, which was probably the most anxious period of time where it's like, oh, you have the thing where I'm pitching the actual prices and what we're gonna do together and what I think you want. Uh,
Hmm.
and then there was basically a little bit of time there where we take the statement of work and just tweak a little bit. Or I think I pitched back two options basically, which is always a good thing to do. I think with any big corporate client is to give them like 2 to 3 things to choose from so that they feel empowered in that way, and so that you have some wiggle room in what you're kind of pitching. So we landed on one of those. And then it goes into the annoying logistics part of B2B procurement. Like everyone has agreed, they've agreed on a price, they've agreed on a statement of work, and now you have to figure out how to sign all the things and get paid. And that is
Yeah.
very convoluted for particularly older big companies who have been around for a minute. They don't invest in their vendor onboarding process in the way they might invest in their mobile app. Like it's going to be
Yes.
pretty outdated. So be prepared to to have to navigate a really clunky old system. But that's when, with a big corporate client, you might have written up a beautiful statement of work in your own preferred templates and styles and things, and they'll say, "Oh, that's nice, but you need to use our our template." Our
Yeah.
template that has all of this boilerplate legal language in it, and you have to use our master service agreement to prep your professional services agreement and all of these things. So then you have to go and be like, all right, let me take what we agreed on with the person I'm actually doing work for and translate it into this clutchiness of this template so that it'll all be able to go through the legal system.
Hmm.
And once that figured out, you have to get onboarded into their vendor processing system so you can get like background checked or whatever insurances that they need to know that you have. They could do all of that due diligence. And then you have to get onboarded probably to a different system for invoicing so that you can get paid, and particularly if you're looking for more than what would cost to go on like a credit card for a corporate client. You'll almost certainly have to deal with invoicing through their corporate providers, which you want to do because that's gets you in the system. And then theoretically, you're a vendor who can work for them regularly, right? Because you've done all of the pieces and your name is in the system and you're easy to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the key part.
Yeah. It was kind of my goal all along, especially for these bits of like kludgy system access stuff, is to just be the easiest person to work with and be kind and gentle and when asking for why did this not work or why did that not work. So you just want to come off as just highly professional and capable and not too needy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think something else that would be helpful for folks to hear is when you are early on in that process, especially when it comes to offering the scope of work and hey, here's how we can work together. One framing that's helped me is to understand this is a conversation still. Like nothing is set in stone. There's still flexibility. There's ways that you can understand what the client needs and wants. You can tailor the SOW better. And
Mhm.
so I like to remind folks to give themselves a little bit of the grace to not white knuckle your ideas so tightly, because this is a very moldable part in the experience. And then it's about making sure that you have the emotional and relational endurance for onboarding. So to your point, you might give them an SOW and they're going to give it, hey, actually, it needs to be in this template or I actually need to sign our thing. I would strongly encourage you to have an attorney look at that so you don't get screwed over. I remember there was one client I had where we were in the midst of negotiating them an opportunity for them to license out some of Humanity Centered's content.
Mhm.
And buried in their legalese were clauses like, we can clone this work and make it better and not give you any royalties or payment towards it. We can clone it outright and not and use it in other things and I give you credit towards it. If we want to renew, you can't renew fees for up to 10 years. And even so, it will be by 0.5%. These were like actual things and I would have signed away my IP, which is everything in a
Yep.
consulting service based business.
Yep.
So when these bigger companies give you their contracts, please, I beg you, spend the money on an attorney to have them look over it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good thing to do. And even for a client who's really eager to work with you and they haven't read for probably what's in the master service agreement, like the person you're actually doing the work for.
Hmm.
So they'll often be surprised by
Yeah.
what's in there if you're not reading it really carefully. One of the things I had on my list of recommendations for folks to think about is oftentimes that master service agreement is really tight. They don't want you to touch
Yeah.
it, right? That's their very verified, hyper protected legal document. But at least in my case for this client, the language in there often provides a little bit of wiggle room
Hmm.
around things through saying something like it'll be like yada yada this per the SOW, right? And it's the statement of work where you have a little bit more flexibility to tweak things and protect yourself a little bit more.
Hmm.
Because there was an IP related thing in the one that I did as well that we it was one of the few things that we kind of went back and forth a little bit on to make
Hmm.
sure that it was correct. Because again, you want to, like I added specifically to my statement of work an IP clause that protected my intellectual property. So this client had in their original statement of work and their master service agreement a clause that was something around, I'm not going to remember the exact language, but basically saying what you produce while working for this company is the property of this company, which is super common, right? That's one of the reasons some of us get out of corporate, right? Is because
Yeah.
everything you create there is owned by the company. But I particularly added an IP clause to my statement of work that specified that any of my pre-existing frameworks, methodologies, things
Amazing.
like that are mine and will remain my IP. And while we went back and forth on the exact phrasing of that with the client, like it stayed in there to make sure my IP was protected while they still got what they needed, which was to be able to use those frameworks within the context of their company, even when I was gone.
Amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I remember with another client, they had a term in their contract where it was about payment schedule, and the payment was net 6 months. Uh,
Months.
6 months. What do you
I thought 90 was bad.
Yeah, I mean, 90 is bad too, but it was 6 months. I was like, 6 months? What? So I negotiated that to net 30. So, but even with that client, I was working with them for a couple years. They were consistent. They loved working with us. At one point, they put their foot down, like, we can't keep doing net 30. It has to be net 6 months again. And I was like, all right, then I guess we're not working together.
It's a bummer.
And we stopped working together because I couldn't. That 6 months is wild. That's very,
Yeah,
very uncommon.
yeah, that
Even
is,
that 90 is like a stretch.
yeah,
But for me, again, being a small business, you have to think about cash flow. You got to think about payments. So there are certain terms that just won't work for us. If I'm a big company with bajillions of money in the bank account, sure, take your time paying me. But that's not me. So it's important to have an attorney look at that to make sure that, yes, your IP, but also making sure that you're being paid in a way that doesn't put you in a bind in your business.
yeah, 100%. That was the other big change that I made through the statement of work for this particular client, because they were not as bad as 6 months. I think they were net 75 or something like that.
Okay.
Still
Okay.
pretty significant lag time.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, it's like, corporate clients are like, in because I've been a corporate client, I know that sometimes what we say the schedule is not going to be the schedule.
Yeah.
And for example, like this particular client that I'm working with now, I think it was a net 75 range, which isn't like the worst in the world, but still not ideal. Particularly because with a corporate client, the schedule that you even state in the statement of work might, it's like a suggestion, and it can actually turn into something quite different. So what you thought you might have been working on next month is actually 3 months later instead of that. So all of a sudden you might be waiting 6 months or more for any actual return on a contract that you signed. And hopefully you have other clients in that time period, but also you saved time for that client because you thought you were going to be working with them.
Hmm.
So you have to get something to protect your choice to work with a client, your mobilization effort, if you will, to make sure that you're ready to go with them, because you're choosing to work with them over another client, over other things you could be doing for the business, which is why I asked for 50% down in this particular contract that we were looking at.
Super smart.
Yeah, it's a really good way, and the way you can kind of pitch it to them is essentially as a scheduling fee, like, because you are protecting time for them, and that's pretty acceptable. So in that case, I got that 50% pretty quickly. Not even on the because I think it was on signature. We're going to do the down payment, and then I think I put in a 15-day target for the delivery for the second half.
Amazing.
But yeah, and it's all just to protect you and your time, because things can change on a dime, and you want to make sure that you get paid for the work that you do.
Absolutely. And I encourage folks to, especially for those bigger projects, to ask for 50% non-refundable deposit. It's protecting your time. It's making sure that they're having that slot in your calendar. But also, let's say month one into a 6-month project, they're like, actually, we need to cut you loose, can't work with you anymore. That money is a way to protect you because you could have been looking for new client work during that time and you weren't. So the 50% buoys you and protects your business, even if some hard decisions need to happen on your client's end.
Yeah, 100%. It's like things go wrong all the time. It's like suddenly like their budget falls out from under them. You don't want to get caught up in the rails of that.
Mhm. Exactly.
Mhm.
And I think it's a really good example of a boundary, but I imagine some folks are listening to this and they're curious about how do you tell the difference between holding a boundary and being inflexible?
Mm,
Was there anything you were genuinely willing to move on? How did you decide what you could flex and what couldn't? What's
mm.
the tea?
Yeah, I think the thing I would not have moved on was getting anybody down. It's like I might have shifted the percentage potentially on the 50%. I would have been willing to maybe like move that slightly, but I needed to have some money up front to guarantee the scheduling. So that I consider to be a hard boundary. The schedule of that I think is also flexible. So it's like it didn't necessarily need to be on signature. Like we could have played around with some of the net days for that. And the one thing that I did move on, and actually I didn't get any pushback on the 50% down, kind of surprisingly maybe, but that was pretty clean in the negotiations. The place where I did have to make sure I was being careful that I wasn't crossing a boundary was in the IP discussion as we were looking through how we were gonna redline that.
Mhm.
They wanted to ensure that they would have the ability to. So I was going to be doing like workshops for them, which would involve me leveraging some of my frameworks to come in and do that. And I want to protect my IP for those methodologies, right? But they want to be able to say use a particular methodology in the future to replicate, if you will, maybe some of the things that we would do, which was part of the statement of work to some degree of yes, part of this is that you'll be able to self-serve some of this stuff in the future. So we had to make sure to like really tie the language carefully. So I keep the IP while you keep usage. And that was the back and forth there to make sure
Mm.
that was correct. So I was definitely willing to negotiate in terms of things that were right for what we had agreed we were going to do together. And where you kind of hold the line is more in what you actually have to protect to keep your business safe, right? Like
Yeah.
both from a funding perspective and a IP perspective.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I love that. And I think too, I've done similar clauses where I've given clients I've licensed out my IP for internal use only and
Mhm.
non-commercial purposes. It's a
Yeah.
very
Mhm.
specific language that's being used here because you want to make sure that again, your IP, especially as a consultant service provider, that's the core of your business. So I love how you're thinking about that because I do think some people when they encounter a potential opportunity like this, they end up making a lot of concessions. They end up being a little bit more loosey goosey on their price. They ended up being more lenient with terms, which are the things like IP and things of that nature. They then end up accepting, okay, I guess I'll do the 90-day net. I'll figure it out. At least I have a client under my belt.
Yeah.
And or they allow the scope to stay very vague, which then leads to scope creep because they're just really focused on closing the deal.
Yeah. Mhm.
And they tell themselves that, okay, I'll just absorb all the other friction that will come with this. But part of that is a little bit of a detoxing need from being in corporate. In corporate, we're so used to org changes, chaotic leaders, reactive things that we're just conditioned to absorb the friction.
Mhm.
But when you have your own business, you don't have to endure that anymore. And you can find clients that are reasonable, that understand the value of what you provide, and will work with you to make sure that that's protected and also they get what they need for their business too.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think one of the things that's helpful to keep in mind is it is a corporate machine, and a lot of it is a machine. Like the documents are the documents, the templates are the templates, the systems are the systems, but the edges of that are all it's people, right? And you just want to, for the most part, you're probably working with someone who wants you there and respects what you do, and they've gotten far enough along in conversations with you to have a statement of work and then you're starting to put together. So they're invested, and they're not going to pull out because you ask for something that you deserve. They obviously, there are cases where they might say, I wish I could do that, but my hands are tied. That happens sometimes with corporations. But when it comes to the relationship, it's not going to break your relationship with a particular person, even if it, for whatever reasons might happen or catastrophes that might occur with a company. I think if it's someone you want to work with and you respect them and they respect you, that will hold. Mhm.
Heck yeah.
Yes.
Yo. Yeah, I was just talking to a client the other day of mine, and they're negotiating a deal with someone that they worked with, but who's now at a different company. And they sent out a scope of work, a proposal. And the person came back and was like, this may be a little bit out of our budget right now, but let's figure out something that can work, because I would rather figure out something that can work between the both of us instead of not working with you. That is, that says a lot about that person in terms of their skill, the trust that the decision maker has with them. And that's what it's all about. Business is just about healthy and good relationships, or at least it can be and it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. All of the rest is just weird guardrails, right?
Yeah.
That are legal guardrails on both sides of the relationship.
Exactly. So, yeah, tell us a little bit more about your business, like the business as it stands today. And I'm curious as well of what was the impact of being able to sign something on your own terms?
Yeah, so the short, quick pitch for the business is, and I know you teach us about elevator pitches, so I'm still working on it.
This is the
Uh,
moment.
to the moment. What I strive to do is I help leadership teams move faster, make better decisions, and operate with less friction. The slightly longer pitch of that is that I bring a human centered design point of view to strategy and leadership operations. While I have worked very closely with human resources in a lot of different parts of my career, that's not my area. I come in to really try and treat an organization like a design challenge. And we're going to figure out the ways that you can build better values grounded infrastructure that will help you navigate change in this complex world that we live in while staying true to yourself. That's really the goal.
Love
And
it.
sometimes I do a little side dish of design or product strategy for fun because that's my background. What-
I love it. And yeah, and tell me a little bit about, yeah, what was the impact of being able
yeah.
to find and sign a client on your own terms?
Yeah, I mean, it gave me the juice I needed to keep going for sure. The fact that I was able to kick that conversation off relatively early was critical to just giving me the energy that I needed to kind of stay afloat, even as we were still debating on what the actual contract was. I was like, okay, this is here. I've got this, so I can I can rest a little bit and refocus my energy because I feel more confident, right? That I have something that's gonna be sellable and marketable because I did it once. So I should be able to do it a second time and a third time. So that was a really big deal. And it's less about the money and more about just the confidence that you really do have something that people want. And by continue to refine how you talk about that and how you sell it and how you market it. But getting that early lift off the ground was very reassuring. So,
Yeah, I mean, are there things that you're doing now, or is there a way that you're living now that would have felt impossible before you were able to run and do your own thing?
yeah, I mean, one of the things that I was so exhausted by towards the tail end of leaving my corporate job was how to phrase this exactly. It was like chaos that you have very little control over, right? It was just getting more and more chaotic in ways that were less and less controllable. It's like
Yeah.
everything getting further and further out of hand. And I would I just realized that I needed to rest. I think the first thing that I realized as I was leaving corporate is just at first I thought I was just going to take 3 months off and not do anything, and then I would go back and get another corporate gig. Originally, I think I thought that I would basically live and retire in big corporate environments because it's where I spent most of my career. But
Hmm.
like a month into my rest and recuperate time, I thought, well, there's never going to be a better time to do this. So if I'm going to try it ever, I should take this opportunity because if I wait, I will just go back to another corporate job and I'll continue to do the thing. But take the opportunities they come. So I knew I had good runway. I knew I could probably try this for at least 2 years before it became if I made no money for 2 years, I would be okay. So this was the time to figure out whether I could make something sustainable for myself. And yeah, and I think the big thing that I didn't really realize, you get tied to the money in corporate. I think that's a
Hmm.
certain salary that you get they call it golden handcuff, like for a reason. I think you just decide that you can't live without that. And what I think I've realized in my goals now is I don't need to make the same amount of money necessarily that I did make in corporate. I mean, I
Hmm.
probably could if that was like a goal, but it's not a goal for me. It's more now that I'm thinking in terms of emotional sustainability of what I'm doing and being able to have the time to just say, "Hey, I don't want to do this like
Yes.
right now." Well, I have control over that. That's the beauty of it, right? And I've never had that before, so
Mm.
it's a joy to be able to experience that and to try to build something that'll make sure that I can continue to do that going forward.
Heck yeah.
Mhm.
Yo, I'm so proud of you, Ray. It's been so cool just to watch you step into your gifts, your talents, recognize them for what they are, and then to see other clients and folks mirroring that back to you and showing you, like, yeah, this is valuable and we see what you can do and we want to work with you. So I'm so happy for you and just so excited for you.
Thanks. Well,
Yeah.
I credit you a lot for that. The early work that we got to do together with Choose Courage was so helpful to unpacking some of those goals and values that are so important to be able to build something meaningful. Mhm.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
know we're getting close to time, so maybe for the person who's listening, who is at a table like that right now, maybe they're wanting to start something, or they're nervous to send out that first proposal and see what's possible. What's your invitation to them?
Yeah, I'm gonna fall back a little bit on my maybe information architecture background. I do think in terms of content and systems a lot of the time. So I think if you're doing this work, just remember that contracts can seem scary, but there's structure to them, and there is actually more flexibility in the margins than might seem so on paper. You might read a service agreement and be terrified because you're like, oh God, like 6 month rate to pay or something that like really scares you off the gate, but usually, there is wiggle room and ways for you to leverage your statement of work, your scope of work, and your service agreement in ways that will work nicely together to get you the things that you need. So don't be afraid to ask also. It's like I said before, the person who you're talking to who wanted you to do this and is talking to you about work that you might do for them likes you and respects you and wants you to work for them. You wouldn't have gotten this far in a discovery if that weren't the case. So make sure like hardline things are really hardline things before panicking about them. And
Hmm.
remember that people are just people after all. And as long as you're keeping that in mind and treating both yourself and the person on the other side of the table with both kindness and clarity, you will do really well while also protecting your boundaries. Mhm,
I love that.
mhm.
Yeah, those are gems of wisdom. And I'll add on to that too, a little bit of what Ray was talking about in the beginning of this episode of my encouragement to you is to create your own luck. And in doing so, be intentional with the relationships you do have. Be thoughtful, be a good teammate, because it's not necessarily about the name on your resume. It's more about the relationships you've been able to cultivate at those places that you've worked at. A lot of
Absolutely.
times, those folks can and will be your first clients if you are going the service consulting route. So, thank you, Ray, so much for sharing with us a little peek behind the curtain about your experience and just how folks who are in this place of curiosity and consideration. I really appreciate it.
This was super fun. Thanks for inviting me.
I love it. Thanks for hanging out with us and diving into some of these real and unfiltered conversations. We know your time is valuable, and so we don't take it for granted. If today's episode made you think, if it challenged you, or gave you something new to consider, we'd love for you to hit that follow button on whatever streaming service you're using. That way, you'll never miss an episode when we drop them. And if you want to go even deeper, sign up for our newsletter at choosecourageinc.com, and you'll get updates on new episodes, access to exclusive freebies, and first dibs on coaching opportunities and other resources to help you make bold moves in your life and business. So we appreciate you, we see you, and we're rooting for you. Until next time, keep choosing courage over comfort, and a friendly reminder to drink some water.